Hello, everyone. So we're presenting the narrative inquiry, and the members of this teams are Pepe, Pamela, and me, Ruth. And Pamela is going to begin with the topic.
Okay, the first thing is, what is narrative inquiry? Basically, this is a recopilation of stories that involves eliciting and documenting these narratives. And well, in some cases, it has been, some researchers have made a question of what makes a story research. And well, what makes a story a research is when it is interpreted in view of literature of a field, and such process yields implications for practice, future research, and our theory building. Um, this is based on the premise that we understand and make sense of our life through narrative, and it is through telling ourselves stories about ourselves and others that we understand who we are, who they are, and what is the relationship between us. This is the citation, and okay. In the field of applied linguistics, researchers have made use of a variety of genres, including case studies, life histories, learner autobiographies, diary studies, biographies, and memoirs. And in the same way, it takes into account the cultural, political, familiar, and education, and religious spheres. Um, the content of a narrative is the following. It has to be in count the what was told, why it is told, when, where, and who is the person who is saying that. There are three dimensions in the stories that needs to be covered. The first one is the temporally, the second one is place, and the third one is the sociality. Okay, let's go to it. The narrative form, in other words, which is the way that the narratives need to be formed, is that the ideas need to be organized. It has to be a sequence of events. The choice of words that are going to be used, and it has to be coherent. And okay, let's go to the next one. In the narrative inquiry, context plays a very important role because stories are composed in the context based on the interaction that people have in society. For this reason, this is developed into levels. The first level is the linguistic context, which is the talking interaction. And in this level is considered who is talking, when, what, and the roles of the speakers, including the role of the researcher. The second level is the local context. This takes in account the language choice, the physical setting, other people that are involved, and the purpose of the talking, and the conditions of interaction. And okay, why do we use it in applied linguistics? Well, there are some advantages of using it. The first thing is that it's a variety inside that narrative. That narrative research can provide to educators. In the same way, it can explore motivation, identity, multilingualism, learning strategies, autonomy, and self-directed learning. Narrative inquiry can yield practical pedagogical information, and in the same way, it is useful to understand learners' beliefs and assumptions about learning. With narrative inquiry, the researcher can be aware of the cultural differences and expressions in the learning environment. And in the same way, it enables the researcher to access the identity of the participants. And one important advantage of the narrative inquiry is that it allows individual voices to be heard from people who have been marginalized.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how you need to collect your data. There are six steps. The first one is to develop, then prepare, conduct, select, establish, conduct, and transfer. So I'm going to explain them a little bit more in depth in the following slides. So the first one is to develop your research design. First, you need to determine the research question, why I will study, then to develop a rationale, why I will study it, and the third and final, select an appropriate approach and how I will study it. Then you need to prepare your interview questions. Preparing interview questions is important because it can help the participants to know what kind of information they can include in the interview. Because sometimes they don't know how much information you want or what kind of information you need. So it's important to give them like a guide so you get information is like the most important for you. Then we need to conduct a pilot study. This is very important because it is going to help us to know if the questions or the method we chose to do this study is good. So doing a pilot first is going to help us to know if we have any mistakes during the study so we can improve them and then apply the real study. Four, select the participants. More than selecting them, you need to find people who wants to share their stories, and also they kind of feel the needs you have as a researcher. Because sometimes based on what are you going to study and what is your goal as a researcher, you need to look for those participants and then asking them if they want to participate. Number five is establish a rapport with participant. It is important that you have a good relationship with them, that they feel safe because they are going to share their life. So in order to do that, they need to feel safe. They need to feel confident. So it is very important that you have like a good relationship with them. Maybe the first time you meet them need to go to more like an environment that they don't feel like, let's call it in danger. So then they can feel like trusting you and everything. The final step to collect your data is to conduct and transcribe the interviews. This step can be a little bit difficult and maybe not the best or the favorite one because it can take you a lot of time. But this step helps you to analyze and understand better the data collected because you're going to reread whatever you wrote and maybe start understanding while you're analyzing the data you collected. Then we have organizing and interpreting your data. Basically, the author gave us like 6 steps of how he did it. He wanted us to know that nor the first steps to collect it is like the guide to do it, but it's just like an option. He just wanted us to know how he did it and maybe can help us to do ours. So the first one is to code the interview transcripts. This means that you need to level or classify the data to make it more manageable because you're going to have a lot of data. So it is going to be better for you if you find a way to code it. So you know, like when you needed certain parts of the interviews or the transcript you have, it is easier for you to find that information. The second one is to look for connection between codes and start to group codes into categories. This means that all the related codes, you need to put them together in a category. It's going to depend, of course, of how many codes you have, if they are related or not. So you can make categories. And of course, this is going to help you to make it more manageable. The third one is to configure the participant's story from the interview data. And this is to accommodate the speaker's interview. For example, if they have like grammar mistakes, the syntax, the coherence, because sometimes when you are like writing over study, trying to put all the words together can make it like not understandable. So you have to find a way to make it coherent. The first step is to send the story to the participants for their comments, because there can be misunderstandings. Maybe you understood something from the data you collected, but the way they perceived it was different. So it is very important that you send before, when you have all the text ready to maybe to publish or whatever you're going to do with the study, to ask them if it's okay, or to check, and they can make you comments and maybe change if it is necessary to make some changes to the writing you did. The fifth step is to carry out a core story analysis. This is to find a relationship between the stories, because if you have many participants, some of the stories are going to be maybe not the same, but you can find similar categories in different people. And the last one is to know themes as they emerge from the stories. After finding the relationship between the stories, explain the emerging category. This is because you're going to have like you're doing a research about the same topic, so you're going to find like many categories in different stories. So this is going to help you to kind of like explain what is the category about, and then you can have like all the codes together and the categories, and it's going to be like more manageable and understandable for you as a researcher, and of course if you publish it to the reader.
Okay, there's a challenge about reporting the findings of narrated inquiry. So most of the times it is not found as a narrated text. And for that reason, it is important to look for more options as a mode of presentation. And that is because it needs to express a deeper analysis, and it involves more than just telling a regular story. Next, please. Okay, the first option is to tell the story in full detail, and then in that way, all the researchers can analyze this story from different theoretical perspectives. And in that way, different theoretical bases, it is possible to improve the learning experience of students. But sometimes this option is not plausible. Next. So the second option is establish an outline for the audience, and in that way, we can explain to the audience why this topic is important, why should be important for the audience. Then provide some definitions that we're going to use during the presentation. Then presenting a brief description of the study, the data collection procedures, and the analysis process. Next. Next. Okay, so it is important to use some visual aids and use maybe just one citation, because if we use more than one, maybe the audience can be confused. So it is important to tell from 1 to 3 stories, because if we use more than that, we cannot develop appropriately. Then we have to illustrate the point, as I said before, just using one quote. After discussing the topic in terms of the participant experiences, we need to clarify to the audience what are the implications for other students and teachers' context. And finally, we can add some suggestions for future research, and we can make a review to establish what would be remembered for the audience. Next. Okay, so we have three main limitations, which is the narrative inquiry. It's in all its various forms, it's very time consuming and labor intensive. The more stories we have to compare, the broader our understanding will be of how individuals learn languages, and the better our capacity will be able to apply this understanding in developing provisional models. So for that reason, it is important to make a delimitation of the number of stories. Another limitation is the trustworthiness of the information the participants provide. Life stories change over time, and the truth the participants tell can be different from the historical truth. And well, if it involves an evolution and people, obviously, we always we have this limitation. And the last one is the role of the researcher plays in the construction of the story. So obviously, this story will be very subjective. And well, that will be it. Thank you for your attention.